What's up, Thuggies? Welcome back. LEGO's come a long way with Clone Troopers, and as much as I love the new ones, we're going to be taking a look at the old Clone Troopers today. This is every OG Clone Trooper ever made. Check it out. Our first OG Clone Trooper ever made is the OG Phase 1 Clone Trooper. This minifigure came out in a few sets back in 2002, and it came out alongside Attack of the Clones. Now, what I find fascinating about the old school Clone Troopers is that the visor in the middle is actually cut out as opposed to printed, which means it just has a completely black head underneath, which also means it's hollow on the inside. The design is pretty basic on the torso, but I gotta say it's very good for 2002, especially on the back printing. I think LEGO's printing techniques were really good for the time. Next up, we got the OG Phase 2 Clone Trooper. If I'm not mistaken, this minifigure came out in 2005 alongside Revenge of the Sith, and it's pretty much exactly the same as the Phase 1 except with a different helmet. That's a technique LEGO seems to stick with throughout the years. Similar to the Phase 1, the helmet's also cut out, just like every other clone we'll see in this video. And I think for what it's supposed to be, the helmet's really good for the year it came out in, although it does look really bulky compared to what you see in the movie. Hands down a classic LEGO Star Wars minifigure. Next minifigure we got is the OG Shock Trooper. This minifigure is really nostalgic as it came out in the first Clone Trooper Battle Pack. I really love the torso on this figure, and just everything about this figure was really awesome for the year, and it came out in a really cheap set. The back printing is also really nice, but I noticed a lot of inconsistencies with the other Clone Troopers on this one. The red belt's always really nice, and I'm not even going to bother removing the helmet because it's just a black head underneath. Now this figure is pretty much exactly the same as the last one. The only difference is just the groin piece is white instead of black. Not really sure why this figure was made. It only came out in one set, and apart from the completely white legs, it's literally exactly the same as the last Clone Trooper we got. So I don't know whether or not to put it on this list, but I still thought I should mention it in the video. Now here is LEGO's only rendition of the 327th Legion. It's kind of a shame that this is the only figure they ever made for the 327th. I really hope to see more in the future, but I gotta say that this is probably one of my favorite OG Clone Troopers. I also find it kind of funny how they printed on the pauldron, just no one had a problem with it back then. The printing continues onto the back, and the helmet is really good on this figure, although it's slightly inaccurate. But I think we'll let the inaccuracy slide because it's 2005. I really do think my favorite part about this figure is the torso. Next figure is what I like to call the Complete Saga Commander Cody. I don't know why this figure was Commander Cody in the Complete Saga game, but he was. And this figure is pretty much exactly the same as the one we just took a look at. The only difference is that he has a pauldron. And for the year that this figure came out, I gotta say it's a really nice pauldron. Unfortunately, mine is a little sun damaged, but that's bound to happen with old figures. Still very happy to have it in my collection. Next figure we have is the Recon Trooper. This one is pretty unique, especially for the year that it came out in. He's pretty close to the reg, especially on the torso. He just has those extra designs on him, and I really do like the helmet on this one. I think it looks really cool. He has some really nice dark red printing on the back. Next figure we have is the Phase 2 Clone Pilot. This minifigure is really interesting because he uses the same helmet mold as all the other clones, but the printing makes it look really different. I really like how they printed that black dot under the visor. It almost gives the illusion that that's also hollow, but it's actually printed on there. It is kind of weird how you could still see the mouth outline, but it's just not printed on. But overall, I think this is definitely one of the most unique helmets in this collection. The torso is pretty cool too with those breathers. Taking a look on the back, you can see those straps on him. Amazing first edition of the pilot. Next up, we got the OG 442nd. I believe this is probably the second rarest figure in this collection, and it's definitely one of my favorites. He has some really nice green printing on the torso and helmet. The green designs continue onto the back, and he's pretty basic for how expensive he's supposed to be, but I believe he only came out in one set. However, there was actually a magnet version of him, which I believe is slightly cheaper, but I'm not going to count it on this list. Now this is the OG Kashyyyk Scout Trooper. This is the rarest minifigure on this list. It normally goes for around $100 on eBay. He has a really nice sand green OG Scout Trooper helmet, which is really awesome to get in this color. It's the only figure we've ever seen that Scout Trooper helmet in a different color on. He has some really nice camouflage printing on the gray torso and legs. And another fun fact is he's the only figure in this collection to have leg printing. And he's also the only figure in this collection to not have back printing. I feel like he's definitely the most unique figure in this collection, and also definitely my favorite. And the last minifigure of our collection is this updated Phase 2 clone. This is probably one of the least known clones on the list. He only came out in one Swamp Speeder set, which I believe was a Toys R Us exclusive, so not many people had him in their collection, and if they did, they didn't realize he was different than the other ones. Pretty much the printing on this one's just more defined, especially on the helmet. The torso I believe is slightly remastered, and this is the clone that eventually led into the RP2 design. I feel like the back is really weird on this figure. It looks like a weird mix of animated and realistic styles, almost like AP2 before AP2, but overall it's a pretty decent figure, and with that we completed our collection. So that concludes every OG Clone Trooper ever made. Thanks for watching and subscribe.